Hi, welcome to today's video. My name is Paul. So this week I wanted to do a video on the process that I went through to develop a sort of style. This sort of style of watercolor painting that you can see on screen. This is one of my recent landscape paintings. What I'm trying to do is to get an image or an impression of summer. That's the goal. And I've tried a few different paintings in this style to get that sort of essence of summer. Now, whether or not I've succeeded in doing that, I'll leave that for other people to decide. But anyway, that was my goal. And in this video, I wanted to take you through the process, or processes maybe, that I went through in order to develop this style. Not because I think this style is fantastic and amazing and everybody should copy it. It's more just a video maybe for people who want to develop a style. At the moment, they don't really feel as though they have their own style of painting, but they would like to create one. Where do you begin? Where do you start? What direction do you go in? I don't claim to have all of the answers, but I'm going to take you through the processes that I went through. And for me, I feel that it has helped. So I feel as though I've had some success following this sort of process. So that's just what I want to try and explain in this video. I should say, as I mentioned last week, my camera died, so it means I can't record myself doing any drawing or painting. This video is all just going to be still images. But in this case, I think that's okay. I think it still works. And hopefully in a week or two, I might get a new camera. We'll have to wait and see. But for this video, it's all going to be still images. Very, very briefly, my backstory, how I got to where I am now in terms of art. For anybody who hasn't heard the story before, I'm going to keep it very, very brief. So, like a lot of people, as a child, I was interested in drawing and painting, but then as a teenager, I guess I stopped doing any sort of art. I got out of the habit or whatever. And it was in my 20s that I decided to learn cartooning. And that got me back into doing some drawing, which then got me into what some people, I guess, call fine art, drawing other things and not just cartoons, and doing some painting as well, particularly landscape painting. At that time I was using mostly acrylic, or sometimes I would use soft pastels. And that went on for a few years, 4, 5, 6 years, something like that. And then again I quit art. Life changed. I didn't have time to do art. At least that was the excuse I gave myself. So I stopped doing art for quite a long period of time, 20 years or so, maybe more. You have to then jump forward, and I'm now in my 50s. So there's quite a gap. And I decided to do art again, to get back into it. And this time I would use watercolor. I wanted to try using watercolor. I'd never used it before. Something new, something different. So anyway, 4 years ago, I got back into art using watercolor. Those early paintings, not many of them survive. There's one or two. I'm going to show you one of the earliest attempts, or one of my earliest attempts at watercolor painting. So on the left of the screen, you can see that attempt. I decided that to try and develop a style, to try and learn more about watercolor, I needed some sort of direction. I needed a goal to work towards. And I wanted to be influenced by, to emulate, to copy, whatever word you want to use, an existing style, art style. And the one that I was interested in was sort of Chinese or Japanese ink drawing or ink painting. In Japanese, it's called sumie. just means charcoal picture, charcoal drawing. I don't know the name in Chinese. I don't speak any Chinese. But anyway, that was the sort of style of art that I was aiming for. I liked the minimalism. I liked the fact that, a landscape painting would just be a few branches and a few flowers hanging off the branches, something like that. You don't have to do an entire landscape to suggest a landscape. And that was the sort of thing that I was going for. I did a few paintings in this style. I say this is one of them. This is, I think, maybe the first one I did. The first watercolor painting I tried. I tried a few paintings in that style, and then I decided to change to more of an impressionist style of painting, but using watercolor. Most of the impressionists used oil paint most of the time. But I would try it with watercolor paint. So on the left, this is one of the early attempts at watercolor impressionism. And just in case anybody's not familiar with impressionism, I've included an impressionist painting on the right. This is by one of my favorite impressionist artists called Alfred Sisley. So I was trying sort of paint in that style, but using watercolor. And this style went on for quite some time. So far the process. First thing, maybe pick a style, pick an artist or an art movement that you like. And that's your goal. That's what you're trying to aim towards. You're going to use, it could be watercolor or any other medium really. But for me, it was watercolor. You're going to use your medium to try and copy / emulate / be influenced by that style of art that you like. Giving yourself that direction, it narrows down the possibilities, which actually makes things a little bit easier. It simplifies things and it gives you a direction to work towards. So that's the first thing I would say. The second thing is, okay, so I started doing this impressionist style painting, but after maybe a couple of years of trying this, things started changing. And these are two slightly later paintings, and you can see there's a lot more chaos happening here. I started throwing paint around, splashing water on things. The main painting itself was still sort of an impressionist style watercolor, but things were changing, becoming more chaotic, more abstract. So then the next point then I would say in this process is don't be afraid of change also. So you're following this direction, you're working towards copying or emulating a certain art style, but you can introduce new things. You can introduce abstraction, for example, if you like. You can, a bit of chaos, something like that. You don't have to just stick to that one direction you're going in. Once you're making a bit of progress, you can add in other influences and try different things. So that's what I started doing here. And so then the style started developing. It started changing. And after, again, another year or so of experimenting and trying different things, and also for a while I got away from doing watercolor. If anybody who follows this channel on a regular basis will know that there was a period earlier this year, end of last year, when I wasn't doing very many watercolor paintings. It was more charcoal drawings, soft pastels, using those Derwent XL blocks, things like that. Now, I still do all of those things, or from time to time I do those. But at that time I wasn't doing a lot of watercolor painting. But still, in my mind, the process was still going on. And I was interested in this, introducing a bit more abstraction into this painting style. The other thing that I sort of went back to was that minimalist thing. The first thing that I talked about, that Japanese sumie. I wanted to reintroduce that sort of minimalism as well. So there's three things now happening. There's still the impressionism. That's still an influence. I'm reintroducing this idea of minimalism. How little can you put onto the paper and it still looks like a landscape? That's the sort of thing that I'm interested in. And then the third thing was this abstraction and a bit of chaos in there as well. So I guess what I'm saying is, as I said, don't be afraid of change. You get yourself an initial direction, but you can change things a bit. You can add in other influences as well. It's not a set in stone process. It's a more organic sort of process. But it does have a structure. At the beginning, you are giving yourself some sort of direction to move in. So as I say, this style of painting, I'm trying to capture an impression of summer. And I've been doing a few different paintings in this sort of style. So basically, to sum up then, that's the process. If you call it a process, maybe it's not quite as set. But anyway, give yourself an initial direction. Don't be afraid to experiment, to try different things. You can add in other influences as well. So you can have a mixture of influences. It doesn't just have to be one thing. In my case, it was sort of a minimalist approach, and then impressionism, and then combining that, and then putting in a bit of abstraction as well, a bit of chaos into it. All of those things sort of mixed together to give me this final painting. But in all of those, I was working with art styles and examples of artists that I personally like. And I think that's also an important thing. Copying a style, emulating a style, again, whatever words you want to use, of artists that you enjoy, that you like. I think introducing a style that you're not really familiar with or you're not really that fond of, I don't think that's going to work as well, maybe. Anyway, I hope maybe this is useful to somebody. If you are struggling to find a style or direction to go in, just try and simplify everything. Just pick a medium, stick with one medium, at least for 6 months. Find an artist or an art style that you like, try to emulate that, and then allow yourself to open up to other influences as well. And just allow your own style to develop sort of organically like that. Don't put pressure on yourself trying to any sort of false time frames like, in the next 3 months I'm going to do this. I would avoid those sort of ideas. Just let it happen naturally. Okay, if you made it this far in the video, thank you for watching and listening, and hopefully see you again in next week's video.